Hello, if you're looking to get started in EDM production and you don't have a lot of money to spend, I'm here to show you exactly what you need to start for a very small budget. My name is Andy Snow, I'm a DJ and producer, and I've signed to labels such as Syrup Music and Loud Cult, and I've done it without spending a ton of money, so I'll show you how to do the same. Let's get started. The first thing you need to start producing is, of course, a computer. I'm assuming most people watching this video already have one, but if you don't, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the type of computer you need to make music very cheaply. You can use a Mac, you can use a PC, you can use a desktop or a laptop. It honestly doesn't matter at all. A laptop is of course handy if you want to be able to produce anywhere or collaborate in a studio with other producers, but if you're just going to be producing on your own at home, a desktop will do just as well. And thankfully they're quite a bit cheaper too. If you're looking to go the Mac route, you're probably going to be about $600 at the minimum. That's going to get you a basic level Mac Mini. If you want to get a PC desktop, you can get them even cheaper, probably maybe $350 on a good day, and that'll do just fine. Any computer that's made in the last several years is not completely low spec will be just fine. I recommend at least 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigs of storage at a bare minimum. I would recommend, if you can afford it, I would get 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gigabyte hard drive. In terms of your storage, you can get external storage for very cheaply too, so if you start running out of space, you can get, at this point in time, about a terabyte drive for around $50, so it's not expensive at all to add storage, thankfully. Once you have a computer with reasonably good specs, the next thing that you need is a DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation, and it's the software that you use to make your music, to record, to mix, everything is going to be inside of your DAW. Thankfully, you can get a professional level DAW quite cheaply. The one I use is called Logic Pro. The downside to it is that it only runs on Mac, but it has a great interface and it runs a ton of great stock plugins without spending any more money. It costs $200 at the time of this recording, which is November of 2023. That price has been the same for as long as I can remember. It does include updates, at least as far as version 10 goes. They've been using version 10 and updating within that for many years now, so I don't think you're going to have to spend too much money updating it in the future either. Another very popular DAW is Ableton Live, which thankfully does run on Mac or PC. It is a little bit more expensive. The standard version, which I recommend, comes in at $351 as of this recording, which is November 2023. They do make a cheaper version, however, it's very limiting in the number of tracks you can use, so I think you'll quickly find yourself frustrated if you buy that version because you'll have to bounce many of your tracks and combine them to make it work, so it's going to get kind of annoying, so I recommend going with the standard version. That doesn't include lifetime updates, however, they don't update the software super frequently with a paid version, so you can probably use it for a few years before you have to upgrade again. A third popular DAW is FL Studio. It is, like Ableton, available for both Mac and PC, and it's a little bit cheaper than Ableton too. The Producer Edition, which is the one that I recommend, is currently selling for $150, but I believe the normal price is $200, and it's been discounted for Black Friday. There is a lower cost version of FL Studio available, however, it's quite limiting. You're not allowed to, for example, record live audio tracks, which could come in handy if you want to, for example, bring in a guitar on one of your tracks and record that. I would personally recommend that you do the Producer Edition right away so that you're not really limited in what you can do. If those three options are all a little bit out of your price range, that's okay. There's a fourth DAW that you could try called Reaper, which is only $60, and it does run on both Mac or PC. The one downside I see to Reaper is that it's not as popular as the ones I've already mentioned, so it's going to be harder to find things like DAW templates for Reaper, so you are going to have to do a little bit more upfront work yourself in learning how to do sound design and so forth. However, it is so inexpensive that it is a great option in my opinion if you don't have another choice. Finally, if you really don't have a lot of cash on hand, you could try a rent-to-own subscription for Cubase Pro, which costs $17 a month for 34 months. And once those 34 months are over, you fully own the software and you don't have to keep making the payments. And it is also available for Mac or PC. The one downside I also see with Cubase is it's somewhat less popular than the first three I mentioned. I would say it's more popular than Reaper, and there are some DAW templates and construction kits available for it, but it's going to be far fewer than you're going to get with a Logic, Ableton, or FL Studio. One thing that you're going to hear a lot when you're trying to start producing is that you need studio monitors. I don't think that's true. Studio monitors can be incredibly expensive, and more importantly, you need to use them in a treated room. That's why I produce my music on headphones, and this is where I produce my music. It's in a closet. I live in downtown Chicago, so real estate's very expensive, and I don't have a lot of extra space. If you're using headphones instead of studio monitors, the room that you're producing in is completely irrelevant, and so it makes it a far more economical choice. The headphones I'm using are the Audio-Technica ATH M50Xs, and they retail for about $150. I got mine for around $120 because I got them in an open box deal, and they were still brand new essentially. So it was a good value. You don't have to use those specific headphones. Any kind of pro level studio headphones, probably $100 and up, will be just fine. Audio-Technicas are good. As I said, those are the ones I use. You could also try some Sennheisers, which are typically a little bit more expensive, but also fantastic quality. And there's other great brands out there called Beyerdynamic. Just make sure you're getting studio type headphones, not something like a Beats or whatever that's more of a consumer grade product. It's worth spending the little bit extra money to get actual pro headphones. When you're producing music, your goal is to have a flat frequency response for your audio. You want to be able to hear the audio very accurately and not have whatever you're listening through color the sound. And that's why studio monitors are probably the best option if you can afford good ones and treat your room for acoustics. All headphones do color the sound. Even if they try to be flat frequency response, I don't think any of them actually are, or at least not at a reasonable price. But there is a tool that you can buy that will help make your headphones more accurate when you're listening. It's called the SonarWorks SoundID Reference, and it costs $99. And what you do is you install this software on your computer, and you tell it which headphones you're listening to, and they've already measured the audio output of all these models of headphones, and then it will correct it to flatten the frequency response out so it's more accurate. And this is an absolutely essential purchase, in my opinion, if you're going to be producing and mixing on headphones. I started out not using it, and my mixes were really bad and just really unbalanced. And once I installed the software, it was so much easier to get clean-sounding mixes. They sound good in the car. They sound good on earbuds. Wherever you go, if you're mixing correctly, your sound is going to be good. But you really need to buy the SoundID Reference tool in order to get that to work with headphones. Something that you'll see in all pro studios and most home studios is an audio interface. Essentially, you plug it in via USB or Thunderbolt, and then you can plug your audio inputs and outputs into this box. For most EDM producers that are just getting started, I don't think it's necessary. I've been doing this for several years now. I still don't have an interface because I'm not recording live vocals or live instruments. If you do want to record those things, you will need an interface. But for most people, you can just plug your headphones directly into your computer and it'll sound great. There are some headphones, particularly higher end ones, that might need a little bit more amplification than your computer's headphone output is going to have. In that situation, you may need an interface. So if you do, you can get one for starting at about $100 that'll do just fine. But honestly, I think for most people with most headphones, it's not necessary unless you're recording live instruments or vocals. So you can probably skip that step that you see in most beginner tutorials. All right, so you've got your computer, you've got your DAW installed, you've got a good pair of studio headphones, and you've got them sounding accurately by using the SoundID Reference plugin. Now you're going to need some sounds to start making music. Thankfully, you can get them quite cheaply by subscribing to Splice, which is only $12 a month, and it includes an absolute ton of loops, one-shots, which are samples that play one time, for example, kick drum sample or snare or clap and so forth. And you can get a ton of those for just $12 a month. Super high quality. Every producer I've ever met uses Splice, and it's incredibly affordable, and it's just an easy way to get a ton of sounds. You can make any subgenre of EDM using Splice. It's fantastic. The last piece of software that I think is absolutely essential to start producing EDM is a good software synth plugin. While most of the DAWs I mentioned previously do include synths out of the box, they're not generally the highest quality. You're also not going to be able to find many patches for them online. So I recommend you buy Serum, which is $189 one-time fee, or $10 a month for 19 months on Splice.com. And Serum is an absolutely fantastic synth plugin. You can make a huge variety of sounds with it: basses, pads, leads, plucks, pretty much anything you can imagine that's a synthesized instrument versus one that's supposed to sound like something, in the real world, like a guitar or a piano. That's not what Serum is for, but for all the synthesized sounds And for the vast majority of sounds in EDM, Serum will have you covered. You can also download Serum patches, which are the sounds that you put into it, essentially presets, on Splice as part of your $12 a month subscription. So it's a great value. I think there's just no way you'd want to start producing without Serum. It's going to give you the vast majority of sounds that you do need. If you do want to use more acoustic type sounds, like for example a piano, you may be able to use the ones in your DAW. For example, the ones in Logic, the piano is pretty decent. It's not the best I've ever heard or anything, but it's okay. And most of the other DAWs, minus Reaper, have at least semi-decent built-in sounds. They're probably not going to be like the top level ones, but they're going to at least be an okay start. And if you're not using them all the time for like a ton of stuff, you can probably get away with it. If you do want to use a better sounding piano that's more popular, I would recommend trying the Korg M1 plugin, which is only $50, one-time fee. That's used in house music all over the place. It's that absolute classic house piano sound, for an example. There are really good bass plugins, for example, to emulate an electric bass. There are really good string plugins, but just getting started, for most people, Serum is going to get you most of the way there, if not all the way. So that's the one I recommend you try first. The main plugins that you're going to use on a day-to-day basis, besides your synth plugin, for example, Serum, are going to be compressors, EQs, reverbs, and delays. And when you're just starting out, all the DAWs that I mentioned have sufficient stock plugins that do all of those things, so you're not going to need to spend extra money on those. There are a few free plugins that I recommend in addition to the ones that come in your DAW. The first one is called Isotope Imager, and it's used for stereo imaging. Basically, you can make things wider when you have your headphones on. It's most noticeable. You can give stereo widths to things, and the free plugin Isotope Imager does that perfectly. The second one is called OTT, which is a multi-band compressor. You can, again, download that one for free, and it's really helpful in making things sound just a little bit more punchy, gives it a little bit of life to your mix. I highly recommend using OTT. And the third free plugin I recommend, only if you want to use string sounds, is called the Lab String plugin by Spitfire, and it makes super realistic string quartet or solo string sounds, and again, it's completely free. So to recap, how much do you actually need to spend to start producing EDM? In my opinion, if you have a computer, around $250 up front. That's for your headphones and the SoundID Reference software to correct your headphones frequency response. And then if you want to buy your DAW, you could do that. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to spend around $40 a month for the Cubase DAW, for the Splice subscription, and for Serum. If you do buy your DAW, then your monthly cost is only going to go down to about $22. So again, very affordable. You really don't need a lot of money to start producing EDM. And so I really encourage you to give it a shot if you're curious. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments what you'd like me to talk about, and I'll do my best to share some knowledge and help you along your EDM journey. Thanks, everybody.